Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, or where are we, November 13th, I guess? Looks like we've got enough people here to have a meeting, so we have a quorum. I need a motion to approve the agenda this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Need a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, are there any general members' comments out there? We're just going to talk about our lovely agenda this evening. Okay, I guess we'll start off with the Swans Neck Way. Are they, you hear, okay, there she is, okay. Anybody involved, come up and have a seat. So just for clarification, this is an appeal of the decision we made last month, I guess it was, about the two docks at the bottom of the hill for 07 and 09, I think it is, or 09 and 011, or whatever they are.
7 and 9.
7 and 9, thank you. Okay. So,
So
are
my
you
name
the
is,
appellate?
okay. My name is Julia Taylor. I live at 2005 Swans Neck Way. I'm appealing the September DRB decision to approve the dock at 2007 DRB meeting. Margaret, do you have the approval letter, the decision letter? So I just want to show. It's in there. Okay, so the decision letter, when you guys read it, the main paragraph in terms of approval, I want to review this because it's all about my interpretation and then kind of what I present back to you in terms of my appeal. So the first paragraph, my interpretation is the first paragraph talks all about approving the dimensions of the dock, the pathway, and the riprap. It's all about dimensions. Then stipulation B and C are the stipulations that talk about location and orientation and extension into the lake. So I'm going to talk a lot about B and C in terms of orientation and location today. So I just kind of wanted to re-up that.
Okay, I think if you can, when you have an appeal, you have to explain a guideline that's been misapplied
Yes.
or provides with new information. So if you can stick to those,
Absolutely.
and if we agree the appeal can be granted, then we'll hear the whole shebang. Okay.
So Margot, on slide 3 of my deck, so the reason why I'm allowed to appeal is if I'm presenting you with information that you guys did not have when you made your decision. So I do have information that I will present to you. The other is a misapplied guideline. I feel that there are two. One is the height at 24 inches. It should be at 16. The other has to do with the guideline that has to do with minimizing shoreline and minimizing impact on ecology. So those are two guidelines that I'd like to call out. And then the other one is related to the new information that I'm going to present to you, which deals with erosion and how we can mitigate erosion. So so the new information going to, so I guess I'll pause there. Is that adequate for doing an appeal or?
I think and we got a whole bunch of people up here on this board, the first paragraph talks about what we approved, and it says a maximum of 24 inches high above the water. And I know we're saying a maximum, the guidelines say recommend 16 inches or so.
No higher than 16 above the water.
But it's still a guideline, and I think I'm
Okay.
trying to remember back what we said. I think we felt 24 gave them a little bit of leeway because of something about the plants, and if they could go a little bit higher, it might not hurt the plants so much, and that was some of our concern. So I'm not sure that's a misapplied guideline. The guideline is a guideline. And
Okay.
we were allowing a little allowance there to have it slightly higher
Okay.
because of the plants and whatever is along the water's edge there. The ecology part of it, I don't know, does anybody up here have comments about that? Is that not a misapplied guideline, but is that new information in terms of what's going to happen with the runoff? I gather there's a torrent of water that runs down that hillside, and I think that's the concern, but we did hear that last time we discussed it.
There are pictures of it in the previous
Yeah.
application.
So, I mean, is that,
So in terms of the new information, you did not have a survey of 2007 Swans Neck Way or of 2005 Swans Neck Way. Your stipulation B is completely driven on the location of the property line between 2005 and 2007. So the stipulation is written prior to any good grounding or knowledge of where that property line is. So I'm coming back to you, having had my property staked and surveyed. So that is information, so the stipulation was written prior to any knowledge of where that property line was. And now that we've staked that property, I can show you that the location that you have selected for this dock is at the terminus of a significant amount of runoff. If it is approved, then I would want to know from Reston who would be responsible for maintenance of long-term erosion effects. The water will hit that dock, either that dock will be undermined and Ken will have to constantly maintain that dock, or that dock will create a barrier and the water will find other avenues to flow. Who is responsible for any damage to other personal property? If my property is affected by erosion because that dock is put right at that terminus, if Matt's property is damaged because of that, who's responsible? RA requires a leasing maintenance agreement for the dock. The dock that is installed is going to be on RA property. RA wants me for my dock and Ken for his dock to be financially responsible for the maintenance of those docks. But if the decision to put that dock in that location causes significant property damage, who is going to be accountable for that decision?
That's not something I would answer at this juncture, but you can certainly reach out to me via email or via comment.
Okay, will do. So I was going to review the photographs, but if you feel that I've provided in the photograph material in the slide deck I've presented, you can see a blue kayak. That blue kayak is sitting on my dock. My dock is fixed. That is the fixed point. That stipulation or caveat B is all your decision as to where the location will be is driven off that dock that blue kayak is. You said it has to be parallel with that dock. So I'm showing you a photograph of that dock. I've circled in red and put an arrow, the stake now that divides the property line. So now you have, in terms of orientation, you have visual of being parallel to that fixed dock. And you now see where the property line is, and you will have to be to the right of that property line. And your stipulation B says as close, as far to the left as reasonably possible. So I'm presenting a series of photographs for you to now assess, because you did not have this information when you made the decision, where this dock that you've determined will be located. And it is at the terminus of the runoff. This runoff has gotten significantly worse since the installation in 2014 of the Chad's Ford swale uphill. It's great to fix your erosion problem and kick it on to somebody else. So I have a picture that can show the before and after of the installation of the Chad's Ford swale. Again, it becomes an issue when these decisions are made and they affect people downstream. Who is responsible? So Walden Cluster now has a financial obligation to fix what Chad's Ford has done because nobody did long-term planning of the impacts. It has impacted the private owners on Walden Cluster. So all I ask is this board take a pause, and before you make a decision, make sure you understand what the long-term effects are on where you locate this dock. This is not, it has a significant amount of runoff. That water will always come downhill, period. So make sure that you kind of understand where that water will go when you put a dock in its way.
Okay. Anybody up here have any questions of the applicant here? Any clarification, or do we feel like the property line issue is or isn't something we did or didn't know about, or?
Well, my question is, do the property lines extend into the water? I thought their property line stopped at the RA line.
The left side of my property line where my dock is extends a little bit into the water.
Right.
The right side where the land is starting to creep away from me and turn that curve, I do not have water, I do not extend into the water. So for me, it's a mixed bag.
207, my question is, we're placing their dock so that it stays within this imaginary dashed line, which I don't understand the importance of that because the property does not extend into the water. As long as the terminus of the dock at the shore is on their property, it could angle directly out into the lake. There's no reason it has to be at that particular angle.
Yeah, I believe the correct me if I'm wrong, but the property lines, particularly on 09, is well back from the water's edge,
In '07 also.
and 07 also.
There's RA property all along the lake at that area.
Right, so I think that was part of the issue we had last time, was they're putting this in, I guess Nikki was here from RAs.
She's hiding back
Is she
there.
hiding back there?
Yeah.
Okay. Discussing that and the fact that it was basically on RA property. So, okay.
And there seemed to be some question that it was actually parallel to the shore instead of perpendicular to the shore or near perpendicular to the shore. And I don't understand that we had ever said anything that would have indicated that the dock should be anywhere near parallel to the shore.
Or at least perpendicular. I mean, it's got to stick out.
Yeah, or close to perpendicular, doesn't
Okay.
necessarily, you know.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Do we feel we did or did not understand the property lines and the fact this was on RA property to begin with? I mean, if we take a couple of issues, if one is, I don't think, the first one, the guideline, I don't think was misapplied, because it is a guideline, and yes, it does say 16 inches, but we said a maximum of 24 inches. And the discussion around that issue was that we wanted to keep it as high as we could, not to hurt the natural growth that was there, biologs, whatever, the bushes, plants, whatever. So I'm not sure that's an issue. The other issue is the property line extension, and basically, it's not on either property. And I think we were trying to be as reasonable as we could by pushing this over to one side so that it was usable, A, and B, complemented the dock that's next door. I gather that's your dock next door, by asking it, as we say, to be parallel with the adjacent dock. And I guess the one drawing I see here, which says number 15, I don't know if that's, can you bring up number 15 over there? Looks like this.
Yeah, but.
That one, yeah.
So I'll let Ken speak to this. My only reason of putting this in my appeal package is this is the discrepancy between how the DRB decision letter was written and how you would assume location and orientation versus the drawings, and Ken can talk to it, that were submitted with the application. So I just want to make sure that everybody is fully aware of that, whether this is right or the DRB is right in terms of how you are locating and orienting this dock. If, my other comment too would be, you would then, the pathway to that dock would then be at the terminus of the water, if you wanted to extend that further out.
Okay. Did you want to say something?
Yes, right. First, I'd like to point out that in the decision letter, the first paragraph says, as indicated on the submitted site plan. And that earlier chart that you showed was the submitted site plan, the one you had up.
Not the last slide, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, that was the material on the right is the submitted site plan. And it definitely shows the dock. I have other pictures in my presentation that show that that dock is parallel to the 2005 dock. The 2005 dock there is shown totally perpendicular to the end property line. The top view that I have in my briefing, and it's actually in chart 8 on Julia's briefing, if you go to chart 8.
I don't know which is chart 8, so which page is that, do you know?
Should be page 8, I think.
No, I don't think so. One of those?
Yeah, 12 will do, 12.
All right.
That's it, yep. Okay, I've got a version as a handout, but I don't know whether I'm allowed to use a handout.
You know, I have
that actually takes Julia's dock, which shows a slight tilt to the left. I estimated about 15 degrees, which is the way I designed my dock at 2007. So it indeed is parallel to the dock. Now, I notice at times the wind will blow the dock boat around, and it will no longer be parallel to either Julia's dock or my dock. But both docks are slanted about a 15-degree angle to the left. I used to like to think that they left room for my dock, but I no longer believe that.
So this is
So
my
so
issue.
that is the parallel, I think that covers item B, the parallel statement. The first paragraph deals with the submitted site plan. And that's in my deck as a submitted site plan. Julia just showed it a little while ago. It had a little blue line around the shoreline. And the submitted site plan shows the same tilt. So what I've done is I've actually added a notation on site plan that the near left corner of the dock is 4 foot off the property. The far left corner was always 1 foot off the property. So it's exactly as oriented there and on my site plan. I've not changed the dock at all. As far as the stake and the survey goes, I was told earlier that so long as I stayed safely within my line, I guess I have to own up to being a licensed professional engineer and I work summers with a land surveyor. It's very easy to line up our house lines with the property line. And I placed a safety stake, I called it. I estimated it was going to be 6 inches to the right of the actual property line and 6 inches short at the end. It turned out when the survey was done, I was 8 inches short at the end. So I got it pretty close, and I was going to measure from that. I'm now willing to measure from Julia's stake line, and I gained 6 inches in width and 8 inches in length.
Yeah, if we can go back to, I'm trying to figure out what we're talking about here, and we're trying not to rehear the whole issue.
Okay.
That, my understanding, I'm trying to understand what you guys are saying, that I felt you have the runoff was an issue, and I thought we addressed that by moving the one dock over on 07 as far to the left as we could, leaving as much of the growth in there where that appears where the water runoff is hitting. And then we had the other one off to the right-hand side. So I think the drawing that was on page 15 kind of showed it. I think we did everything we could to understand how best to address all these different issues. In terms of the runoff, we're all aware that that is happening. Putting in the docks and maintaining the growth that's there, the landscaping, the bushes, whatever it is that are down there, and elevating them a little bit higher than our guidelines suggest, we're going to save that as best we could. So I'm trying to figure out what.
Can I call out an area?
Let me finish my sentence if you don't mind, okay? I'm trying to figure out what it is you're telling us now, other than going back to the same argument that we ended up with, the conclusion we ended up with 2 months ago. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, all this lines here and this lines there and this property line and this parallel stuff. I think we did all that. We heard all that. And I don't think we need to hear it again tonight. And I think the whole runoff issue was addressed last time because we lengthy discussions about that, leaving all the plants, pushing the docks as far away as we could so that we would alleviate that as best we could. And I'm not sure I'm hearing anything that would allow me to feel like we could grant an appeal. We got 6 other guys up here that can either support what I just said or not. I'd kind of like to hear from them. I think we got the idea of what you're saying.
One quick point. I do want to say the reason why I started with the DRB application is how I read the text reflects how I drew it. This kind of 100% of the dock on RA property and about 60% of the pathway on RA property is not how I interpreted the language in the DRB. So the drawings and how somebody who has no drawings would read this DRB language would be completely divergent. these drawings, this one and the one that's annotated with the graphic showing the brown rectangle and then the gray rectangle, do not reflect how somebody would read the DRB language, because you are giving up all of the property for the dock. The dock will be 100% on RA property, and then about 60 or 70% of your property will be for pathway. That is not what I had interpreted, but if RA is willing to do that, I think that's fine, but that also will still have an erosion impact, and it also, it does not minimize vegetation impact and shoreline impact.
Okay, but I think item D in there, again, this is a little deja vu for me, because I think we discussed all this. The item D in the letter said existing vegetation be retained as much as possible. Any damage to the shoreline due to construction be restored and approved by the RA watershed manager, who may be present, in conformance with the design guidelines for docks. In other words, there
Whose
was.
shoreline? Private property shore, this goes to my question to you, sir, is RA or is Ken responsible to damage to RA shoreline or also private property shoreline?
I think shoreline's where the
So if
ground
it
meets the
damages
water.
my property that has shoreline on it.
Well, then that's a whole other
then
issue. If anything that happens here damages your property, then I think you have a legitimate complaint.
To
I don't-
RA? To RA. So is RA taking on
From a design
responsibility?
review point of view, which is what we are, design review board,
Okay.
and I'm happy to have other opinions up here. I think we heard all this before. We made the best decision we possibly could to take care of the runoff, to maintain the vegetation that's there, to separate the docks as best we could, to allow both of these properties to have a small dock, because we felt it was property value enhancement in that regard. And I'm not hearing anything now that we didn't hear before, and to grant an appeal. Now, that's just my opinion. I'd like to see what the rest of my associates up here feel.
I'll speak up. I tend to agree. I haven't seen anything that's also going to change my mind from our I feel like we had a good discussion and we got to a good place. I think the cluster needs to really look at the erosion problem as a much bigger issue, and I'm not concerned about one more dock exacerbating the issue. So if we were to vote, have to vote, again, I would support our previous decision.
Okay. Charlie?
I agree. I mean, I personally think that basing the dock on the property line of the non-property, the dock could have been rotated more to the counterclockwise and maybe not been so close to the shore. But the way it was drawn on the sketch seems to indicate that, and not these touched-up photographs. And I think our decision from last time was what we wanted.
Neil?
I don't have anything to add, but I do think a graphic for these types of decisions is probably useful, and we didn't include one.
Nick?
I'm on board with what Jason said regarding the no new information tonight and encouraging the cluster to work with the adjacent cluster to fix the downstream erosion. That's unfortunate that it happened, but out of the purview of this board to address tonight. So I hope you can find some resolution with that.
I agree.
Bruce?
I wasn't here, so this is all new. So, and what I'm not understanding, which is all fine, but I still am looking for this, what is the basis for an appeal? What is the specific new fact, or are you asserting, I thought you might be asserting that
So the specific new fact is there was no survey, and if you go back to the one that has the kayak on it, I mean, it's hard to capture, I'm sure this is not captured in the meeting minutes, but, yeah, that one. Since this stake never existed before, a lot of our previous discussion was visualizing that it would be built here. And I can't prove that because that doesn't get captured. So everybody saw this as a great place to put the dock. And you just have to take my word for it. And now that I've staked my property, this location for that dock is now shifted over here. And that's why we didn't kind of pull on me. So the new information is I'm providing you a survey.
So that stake is a corner of your property, is what you're saying?
Is the corner of my property. So where you guys had collectively said, hey, that looks like a good location, That is on my property.
Well, it's
And
not
so-
actually on your property,
I
it's
have
on
to
RA
dispute.
property, it extends past your property. The dock itself would be out on RA property,
So the dock would be somewhere over here.
wouldn't have to be.
The dock is shown 4 feet to the right of the property line. I'm willing to accept it. Julia's stake as the property line. My stake was 6 inches further in, which would have moved the dock more to the right on my
Okay,
stake.
yeah, we got that. Okay. I personally don't see or have heard of the new information enough. I appreciate what you're saying. That's your corner. The idea is to keep the dock away from your property. That's fine. That's still covered by what we said here. I think the runoff, as Jason pointed out, is another issue by itself. That rock thing that got built there that's flooding your property is not a good thing, and that hopefully that can get resolved. But I don't think there's a guideline that's been misapplied or new information that would change what we're saying. We want them to be on their property. If that's where the property is, then it has to be to the right of that, I guess. That's not going to change no matter what we say.
My
So-
only request, since I think I know where this is going, is I'd like the meeting minutes to reflect that I'm highly concerned about who, in 5 years, who is responsible for any long-term erosion damage.
Really put that into our minutes, it's been stricken with the motion carries and how it's voted on. Your concerns.
I can't give an action item to anybody, or
I think you could probably, could you do a member?
can I ask that the lawyer liaison with both Walden Cluster with regard to the long-term effects from the Chadsford swale, and then.
But see, that's not what we're talking
Pertinent,
about
okay.
tonight. I mean, that happened without
Okay,
our
yeah.
knowledge. There's
Fair.
no way we can say, sure.
I bring it up as a huge lesson learned.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
know, you approve something, you have no idea what you're gonna do. So
The rocks-
5 years from now.
The rocks
we'll
never
look-
came here. They were never approved by this board, so that's
I'm just
beyond
saying-
our purview.
5 years from now, we can take pictures of what this is gonna do and send it back.
I imagine the water's still gonna run down there as it always has, but that's,
And,
anyway.
and what that shoreline
I make a
looks like.
motion not to grant the appeal on the basis of not sufficient new information and no guideline was misapplied. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks.
Oh, it's minutes. Did I think? No, I think that is.
Okay, 2017 Lakewinds Drive.
Well, thanks for that.
Are they here this evening? Come on up.
It's another one.
Right. He knows. Yeah.
If you all can identify yourselves as to who is the applicant, and I guess we have some other interested parties. You bring up another chair if you need a chair and identify your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Rose. This is my partner Corey Morris, and we live at 2017 Lakewinds Drive.
And tell me, what are we talking about here?
We've already had a hearing. It got pushed up to this board. I built a deck in May, and the decker did not exactly follow the plans that were submitted. The original application that was approved by the DRB back in 2016 expired. I was under the impression that it was a 2-year and not an 18-month. So it was expired at the time that I went ahead and built. I apologize for that. Needless to say, now I have a deck that needs some tweaking, and I have 2 upset neighbors. So here we are.
Okay. What are if you could let us know what the issues are and how it got constructed that shouldn't have happened?
The staircase that goes down should have been 6 inches away from the wing wall, and it was built 6 inches into the wing wall. And my deck is missing the larger, I think you guys call them sweeps, the wider railing that go across the top and the bottom of the sweeps.
So the stair there that we're seeing was supposed to be set over 6 inches?
So the railing between our houses on the
Yes.
wing wall, that was supposed to sit 6 inches away from my side of the wall. And then those stairs following down as well, which would pull the deck a foot away from Mrs. Hamlin's property. If I'm saying that correctly.
Okay. And that's it?
And
What
the-
other issues were
The
there?
sweeps,
Mrs. Hanlon was not at the original decision 2 years ago, and so when the decision expired, she's now much more interested. She is here tonight, and she was here when we referred it up to the full board from our panel a couple of months ago, because she doesn't like where the deck is in the first place, and since the application had expired, she has every apparent right to be involved. So it's really quite a mess, to sum it up, of something that was approved that only had originally the party to the left as you look at this photograph, only one affected party, which is all that's required, we understand. Her signature was not required on the other side. She is now aware of it and again, doesn't like it, the way it's been built, she sees it. Plus the stairs, as we're now finding out, weren't built as they were supposed to be built either. Although, and this wasn't, we didn't have that information 2 months ago. So that's kind of why we sent it up here, because it was very difficult for our panel to see what a good solution would be to this, or what a good decision would be to this. And we wanted everyone here to have the pleasure of that with us.
So thank you. I'm still mildly confused in terms of the deck we're looking at there with the blue flower boxes is the deck that just got built.
yes.
The stairs coming down were
I
supposed to
can
not
kind
be on the party wall?
You're supposed to be to the left by 6 inches, not touch the
No,
party
it's
wall.
set off from the party wall
Yes, the handrail would
So-
run clear all
This
straight
here
up through.
should have started here.
and
it's
gone,
set
got it, okay,
6 inches, which
Okay.
would then pull these steps in as well.
okay. And you said the decker, I like you call him the decker, that's a good word. The decker is the one that made this error, and he's willing to fix it?
Yes, I forwarded an email from him so that you guys were aware that he is willing to fix it.
Okay.
And he's willing to put the wider sweeps on the, so it looks the same as Mrs. Hanlon's deck.
Okay. All right. And you guys
Well,
are
I
the
brought
next door neighbor, perhaps?
I brought some extra things.
Okay,
I brought the steps that were used as the model for hers, which was at the other end of the cluster of the row. The difference is each of our houses is stepped back. So the house at the other end of the row is fully behind the brick wall. So whereas I'm the one that's jutting out, and throughout the cluster, on the houses that are jutting out, you usually don't put the stairs right there because you're interfering. You're right beside their patio. And I have a better picture that I can pass
If you'll
around
pass
to
it
the
around, sure.
board. A few years ago, I had planted a burning bush, not knowing I had been advised to plant it because my neighbor next door was feeding the geese and sprinkling them or something. So I put that in. Then we found out it was a bush that the cluster doesn't want you to have, so I removed it. But it gives you a better idea of my house compared to the other end. That wall opening is like 4 feet. I have 4 feet of brick wall and then I have a bedroom. So now I have these stairs coming down.
so you're the house to the right, as we're looking at
I'm
that.
to the right, yeah. So you can see where originally the deck I don't know whether this is I guess this is afterwards. The way, that picture, I have another picture that's better that shows from my, could you pass this around? This shows when you're sitting on my deck down there and you're looking up, the deck and the stairs are actually right kind of beside my house, where we always sat, where our patio areas. And I went around and took pictures. There are other houses, there are 4 other houses in the cluster that have stairs coming down, but they usually have them on the side that would be toward his house, where so they both would have stairs coming down on the same side. Mrs. Rose's house is the only one where the stairs come down right beside where you live. And in addition, she did not tell me about the proposal. Nobody on the board, even though they signed that were affected, and I know people on the board, I've been on the board, nobody called either my husband or I and said, this is going up beside, this is a proposal. Even though they said they thought there was maybe something wrong with it, nobody called us. So I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know it had been approved, I didn't know anything until Vanessa mentioned to me that the Reston Association was making them appeal their deck, propose their deck again because I forget what reason. And I said, oh, well, you won't have any problem. I didn't even know she had put this up. I hadn't seen it. I thought she was putting up a standard deck, a little wider with a spiral staircase, because most of the interior houses, that's what they chose to do.
Okay,
They
all
didn't interfere
Okay.
the way this does with my
Okay. It seems
privacy.
to me that, I mean, if the approval expires, that's one issue, but I'm very hesitant to go back and reassess an approval that came through appropriately through the DRB and got approved for a deck. The deck appears to be almost identical to all the other decks. So I think if it's anything that's causing heartburn here, it's probably the stair. So it seems to me like.
Well, there's another issue. I have something to say.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm on the other side, on the left of this picture. I was asked to sign the original application, and Ms. Rose explained to me that she wanted to change the stairs design, so I didn't see any problem with that. I failed to investigate further, and it turned out that she wanted to enlarge the deck. I did not declare myself an interested party then, didn't realize anything else, didn't even realize it was approved. And this year, early in March, I think it was May, the construction began, and I looked at the deck and I said, wow, this is extraordinarily big. And I complained to the board, and they put me in touch with Vernon, I think, in Reston Association, and she sent me the original application to which I had signed, and I realized, well, my bad. But he also said that it had expired, so therefore she needed to apply. And then I made myself an interested party, and I told her that I was going to complain about the size. When we came here 2 months ago in October, somebody pointed out that the length of the deck was exceeded the description of the approved plan. They couldn't tell me how much. I understand that people went there and measured it. I would like to know exactly what the measures are. But I contend that this is enormous. This is my view now, and there's another picture in the archive that shows my view before that, but before the deck was built. It's not exactly the same angle, but you can see, I used to be able to see her boat. Now I can't see anything. So half my view is gone. Somebody pointed out last time that I still have a view that doesn't warm my heart, really. Especially if the deck is not built to specs. Because I believe that Reston Association is here to enforce at least the designs they approve. If it's not built to those specifications, then I don't know what to tell you. It's a mess because the thing is built. I don't see an easy remedy, but I have to say that I'm not happy.
Okay. It's a couple of things that, we've had this discussion a lot over all the years I've been on the board, and the issue becomes, I'll address the view for that. There's nothing that guarantees you a diagonal view across your neighbor's property. That's.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Hold
this
on,
row is.
my turn,
Okay.
my turn, okay? And we've had this discussion so many times that yes, it does interfere with your view across her property, but the number of times we've had this discussion, it's impossible for us to say, oh, well, then therefore she can't build anything because you're looking across her property, we don't want to block that view. Your view, the one that we need to protect, is the one straight out the back of your house. What she builds next to her, we've had this with swimming pools, we've had this with decks, we've had this with all sorts of things that people wanted to build on their property. And we've heard from hundreds of people over the years, I can't look that way anymore because it's blocking me. Well, I'm sorry, that's not our problem.
If I may add
Okay,
something.
no, hold on, let me
Okay.
finish. The second thing is, it appears to me that almost all the decks in this cluster go the full width of the house. I mean, the ones next door do, the ones she's built do. I mean, I don't see where there's a problem with that. Originally, it got approved probably because it met all the other statements, guidelines, rules, regulations, whatever you want to say. And in my mind, it comes down to the stairway isn't right. It extends past the party wall, which I can see.
8 feet. 8 feet.
Okay.
No.
It doesn't look like it goes 8 feet, but that's whatever, past the party wall. Can we go back to that photograph that shows the stair? But it seems like,
That's it.
there you go. Is that the one? Oh, it's nice. It's in the snow.
That was the question I should have asked. On the original proposal, it states it's going to go 8 feet beyond my wall on the side. It actually says it. And I was going to ask, does the design
And that's-
review board approve something like that? And they didn't anywhere else in the cluster.
Yeah, I mean, it is her property, so yes, and I gather it did get approved. I assume it got approved to be the width that it got constructed.
It
which
didn't
is-
go before the board.
What didn't?
It only was signed off by some member on the design review board.
It went to a panel.
The original thing went to a panel to be approved. So it was approved. So I guess, like I said a couple minutes ago, to reverse an approval, which I don't see personally a problem with, I think there's maybe a problem with the stair didn't get built exactly the way it should. The applicant has stated her decker is willing to correct that. But I'll be quiet and let's hear what the rest of
May I complete my statement?
Can I jump in here?
Okay,
My name is Pete Blond, I'm on the cluster board. And really the reason, we're not an affected party, we didn't register, but the reason that I came was, first, we were curious as to why there wasn't an approval or disapproval 2 months ago, and now I know the answer to that. And then the second thing is just to provide some facts. You're correct that when the development was built, every house has a main level deck that runs basically the width of the house. Some are multiple elevations, but for the most part, they're there. The people have added, over time, they've added stairways, like this stairway, or gone all the way down straight. I mean, it's a mixed bag. And then of the last 10 years or so, people have, instead of putting wooden stairways down, have put spiral staircases down. And so the cluster doesn't have a standard that says it has to be a spiral staircase, or it has to be a wooden one, or you have to have one or you don't. It doesn't have a standard that says whether the stairway should be on the right or the left. And in fact, there is another house that has a stairway with the same orientation as this one that was built within the last 5 years, and it extends beyond the property line. The address is 2006 Lakewinds Drive. So it's unusual, but it was previously approved by the board, and I don't know of anybody that has complained about it. The thing that I can see that is odd, it has to do with the elevation of the houses, how high you are. Like my house where I live is actually situated lower than the houses on either side, and so people can come out on their deck, turn around and look right into my living room, both sides at the same time. I mean, but that's just the way it is. We're townhouse, of course. So, board itself doesn't have any real objections to the design. The board would agree that if there's a rule that says that the stairway should be 6 inches from the wall, it should be. We're in complete agreement with you as to whether you should be able to look out your window and not have the right necessarily to look across someone else's property. We don't have an issue with that. It's kind of an interesting situation that if everything that could go wrong has gone wrong here. I've never seen one with so many things happening where people approve things and then change their mind. Other people are not informed and don't know the deck has even been put up. And the person who comes to construct the deck doesn't follow the diagram they've got, and they're 6 months late in the process. So I can see you guys have your hands full, but I have no idea how much money to spend on the deck, but you have to be able to rely on something before you lay out $5,000 or whatever it was.
On the one that you passed around, that was one I recommended. If she had done it like that, it wouldn't have been a problem.
If she had done it like that, she would have continued further than 8 feet.
It would come out even
No,
further.
if she had done the stairway beside his spiral, we would have had no problem at all.
Okay, well,
That's what they did on this side.
okay, I think
They put a staircase right beside a staircase, which didn't
Okay.
interfere with either house.
I think it's our turn now. I think we got it.
May I complete my statement? I did.
No, I think you had your 3 minutes. I think let us discuss this.
Okay, thank
I'm not trying to cut you off. We heard what you said. I did have one question in terms of the approval letter from June of 2016. There's nothing in here about it, the stair having to sit 6 inches off the wall. Doesn't state anything about that at all. It's just-
There was a drawing.
Okay, but it's not here in the approval letter.
Well, if it's on the wall, then I have to pay
Oh,
for
I
the
see. In
repair.
this little, hold on now, in this little drawing, it does say 6
This is
inches.
what
Okay,
the letter told.
let's start our discussion up here. Bruce?
What I wanted to understand was that there are approved versions of this in the cluster.
Correct.
And there's no reason to understand or infer that there's any reason we wouldn't have approved it the first time. So I'm inclined to have it, as it's been suggested, conform to what we did approve. And that's the right solution.
I mean, my understanding, just to respond to what you're saying, is the original drawing showed the stair being set over 6 inches. The decker is willing to modify that and move the railing over so that that happens. And I think if it's an issue for the neighbor, I don't know how your cluster feels about privacy screens, but you could certainly put
There are
something
people that
there
have privacy
if
screens.
that's
There are people
a
that
huge
put up their
concern, but
stuff.
just a question, okay? Ken?
There are no cluster standards, and it looks like other homeowners have done something similar. It sounds like, as we'll say it, the Decker has agreed to remedy the stairway situation. So I don't see any need for an appeal as long as that can be rectified.
Nick?
I have nothing to add beyond what Ken and Bruce said.
Neil?
I think I would like to know if the deck extends too far. That did come up 2 months ago. Is it also not built dimensionally per the approved plan in depth? Is it more than 18 feet?
Yeah, Yeah, our DRB inspector went out, and from what she could determine, it's approximately maybe a foot to 12 inches longer than what the original.
I mean, deeper. I mean, it's always, the property's 22 feet wide, the drawing shows the deck being 22 feet wide.
Right.
So you're
Without
saying
lifting
it
up.
might stick out a foot further than
Correct.
got approved.
I think that's some issue. When the approval expires, to me, it's expired. If the homeowners had changed, that would be a new affected party. That's not the case. The homeowner originally that lived there wasn't at the meeting where it was first approved, and then it expired. Why do we have expirations? So, maybe I'm making it more complex than it needs to be. As I said at the last meeting, when we referred it up to the full board, I think the construction overall looks workmanlike. I don't think it's unattractive. I think pulling it 6 inches off of Miss Hanlon's property and perhaps having some privacy screening is a reasonable remedy. And I was hoping that she might agree to that as well, which would make me feel better voting for this. So, anyway.
Charlie?
I really don't have anything to add. I think once the stairs are properly constructed, I think that should be the issue.
Yeah. Jason?
I'm same here, nothing yet.
Okay. Need a motion of some form? Anybody got a motion they'd like to make?
I'll move to approve, I guess we're not hearing the appeal.
It's not an appeal.
It's not an
Yeah.
appeal, it's
Yeah.
just got referred here, that's why
We're hearing it tonight.
Yeah.
Everybody votes.
Well, I don't think it's worth, I move not to approve, I move not to appeal.
So it's not an appeal.
Oh,
You approve the deck or not?
I'm sorry, I thought this was an appeal.
No.
Okay, my
No,
apologies.
not this
Okay.
way. It
Thank
got
you.
referred
I know that what
panel
Neil was
to the
trying to
full
say.
board.
All right, I move to approve the plan as submitted with the stipulation that the stairway be remedied with their contractor according to the specifications. The original specifications, 6 inches off of the wall.
Okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
Do we have to comment? Go ahead.
We have to have a second.
I'll
Is there a
second. I'll
There's a
second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Yeah, do we need to include wording that the additional foot is acceptable? If in fact that
I think so.
is a foot?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I would like that added to the motion.
Okay.
I'm willing to add that to the motion.
I'm willing to second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? First, go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, I had a question. If we would have heard this in the first instance, right now, we're approving it as built with that change of, on the stairs. Would we have approved, this is rhetorical, would we have approved the extra foot in the first instance? And is it unusual, is that consistent with what the size of the decks is? There's many additional decks.
I think as the cluster has stated, there's many different extensions, many different sizes.
None of them are that long. Go
We
measure
have-
them.
we have several
We're talking about the
extensions.
depth, we're talking depth here, right?
We don't, there doesn't seem to be a.
There's no
standard.
I don't think there's a standard, so.
So I was just wondering what we have, do we know?
Well, I saw at least one other that was very similar in size to this.
That's what I wanted to understand.
Okay. All right.
I have a
Any-
comment before.
Yes.
Do we need to stipulate the other element of the deck, the railing that you said the contractor would
Yes.
resolve? What did the decker call it?
The sweeps,
The sweeps. I guess it's the.
What are sweeps?
The pickets don't go all the way to the treads.
Yeah, it's kind of a banding beneath the road.
Space for sweeping.
Oh, the sweep area, okay.
Oh,
If you look,
you lost me.
Got it.
some of the standard decks go, the verticals go all the way to the deck.
Correct.
This has what's called a sweep. You leave a space there
So you get the
that you
leaves
can
off.
get the leaves off and so on, which is a Fairfax County
Yeah.
deck regulation these days, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But that's,
I didn't know
so
that.
we're including sweeps along with the motion.
I'm agreeing to that.
Okay?
Agreeing to the
Okay.
second, to that.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
There's one no. Abstentions? Okay, thank you all.
thank you.
could you tell us what you approved tonight? What are
They're
you
supposed to
saying has to
correct,
be done on the stairway?
they're supposed to correct the stairs, so it's like the drawing, so it's 6 inches off the wall.
Away from the wall, but still extending 8 feet out the side of my house.
It's gonna have to extend until it
I'm
gets
gonna
to the
have
ground.
I'm gonna have to do some, build some wall, put something in.
Yeah, I would encourage that you work together on some type of a privacy screen
Yeah,
potentially.
I'll put something in.
Good luck.
Okay, I guess we're talking about the Snakeden. Anybody here to discuss that? At least one person. Across the street.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman. I thought it was an appeal.
No, it's just Neil just wanted us to play. So.
It's the issue of both neighbors not having to be notified. She was never notified of it. I think if she had been, the stair would have ended up on the other side.
Tony,
With the notice change, is there any difference in our notice?
you were going to look into it.
I'm sorry.
Process
Too many
to be
people talking.
revised.
I was only asking about
To
the
notify
notice.
both
Would there
neighbors.
anything be different now in our rules?
Okay, I'm not sure what we're calling this. Sorry.
So I'd like to introduce Megan Fellows. She's with the Fairfax County, and she'll be presenting on the official title is Snakeden Branch at Lake Audubon Stream Restoration Project that is between Cedar Cove Cluster and Wake Robin Lake.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here because this is about year 15 of this project. Originally identified by the members and the residents around Cedar Cove and Wake Robin, this stream is desperately in need of some assistance. And so tonight, hopefully you're approving us going ahead and actually constructing it. The restoration project in total is about 800 linear feet of stream. It is the channel from South Lakes Drive to Lake Audubon. We have had a design review team actively working on this version of the design for about 2.5 years, including residents, members of both Cedar Cove Cluster and the individuals in Lake Robin Drive. Reston Association has been an important design partner, as well as members of the county engineering staff, design staff, construction staff, restoration staff. Here is the stream, if you're not familiar with it. South Lakes Drive is up at the top of the screen, and then Lake Audubon is the little blue at the bottom. The different colors are the different reaches of the stream. The purple section in the center does go off onto private property. These are 3 or 4 different homeowners, but it isn't.
Could you move the microphone? Every time you turn your head, I can't
Sorry.
hear you.
It is all within a floodplain easement.
What?
This round of restoration, we completed the surveys and tree assessments in 2017. In March and April of 2017, we came to your board for a concept approval, which was approved. In June, we obtained land rights. However, we were unsuccessful in getting one of the access easements that we wanted. So we went back for a refinement of the concept plan in July of 18. And this is that final refinement. We now have a nationwide 27 Army Corps of Permit engineer, Army Corps of Engineers permit. So this is the plan that we are looking to build, and therefore we're seeking approval. Final design drawings for final permits will be in the spring, hopefully to work on construction next summer. There were significant design constraints. As you can see from the map, there isn't really very much access. There's no major roads. We will be coming through the Cedar Cove cluster for both of our access points. There are 7 different utilities within this area that will need to be relocated or safely driven over during construction. The tree condition, although there are several trees in here, it is a wooded area. They are hazardous trees. Reston Association has performed surveys. During this design process, one of the trees actually came down and almost hit a member's deck. And then, again, significant easements were required for this, both within Reston, private property, and the Cedar Cove cluster. Here's some of the best existing condition shots. The turquoise is a sewer main. There's actually 5 different sewer main crossings that are exposed. There are 3 private laterals. The trees are undermined. All of this has resulted in sediment into Lake Audubon. I think the cove right at the end is about 3 inches deep. So probably not all from the stream, but probably a lot of it. This is the 65% plan view. You can see we're long enough, we fit on 2 sheets, so you'll have to bring out your magnifying glass. The red-ish portion is the section of stream that will be impacting and realigning and stabilizing. Our access points, as I said, come from Cedar Cove. All of the 4 adjacent property owners have been informed. 2 of them have given private easements. At least 2 of them are here tonight. They tell me they're all in support of the project. We'll see. I think everybody's just really anxious to get this in and done and fixed. The tree preservation and removal plan, which is a significant part of the project, does not hold any bars. We have preserved as many trees as possible, but so many of the trees are right on the banks of the stream that need to be realigned and armored that there will be significant loss, but we'll preserve a small section about midway down, and then in this section, and I don't know if I have a pointer on here, if you remember the concept plan, sort of in the upper right-hand corner, we were going to have to take out all those trees down, and we have actually reduced the alignment or the limits of disturbance so that we've preserved all those trees in that section. And the lower portion of the slides on the Wake Robin side, that's the down, up and down, just opposite from east and west. That's all sanitary sewer line, so that's not supposed to have any trees on it anyway. The final numbers right now are about 140 trees, and these are 4 inches in DBH and greater. Again, we'll continue as we refine this, as we put the final touches on it to try to preserve as many trees as possible. We do have extensive replanting. That's 1,089 shrubs, 200 understory and 100 overstory trees per acre of disturbance, which we follow up to 3 years later to make sure that they survive. 68 of the trees that we are proposing to remove are dead, damaged trees on the banks, sanitary sewer. So, something less than 100 trees are just for access. The highlights, I think, are the fact that the community is really behind this. It's requested that we come in here and do this project. Reston Association has really been supportive. The easements for the property have been granted, which, if people didn't want us to do it, they would say, no, you can't have the land to drive your vehicles in through here. And then construction cost estimates right now are under $1 million, so this would be our county contractor that would be doing the work, which really helps in keeping the schedule down because we can, it's short enough and we don't have to wait for the bid process. We can move forward quickly. That's my contact information. Everybody on the project has that, so now you do too, but if there's any questions, concerns.
Yeah, just 2 quick questions. Our drawings we're looking at are such small scale, it's hard to see. The last time we saw you, at one point, it broadened out and created sort of an island in the middle. It looks like that's gone.
It is.
Okay.
Because we couldn't get the access through the Wake Robin side,
Mm-hmm.
it was determined that the amount of material that we had to move on and off-site became too burdensome for one community to hold. And so we went with this alternate alignment, which doesn't have
Okay.
that.
Just for the record, I live on Wake Robin, so I know of what you speak. In fact, I'm glad to see that I moved into my house 20-some years ago, and those sewer pipes were exposed 20-some years ago. So now, 22 or 23 years later, we're finally going to get them buried. This is good. That's progress.
I think they were exposed in 1975 when they were laid.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time coming. In our letter of June 2017, we encourage the applicant to consider lessons learned from previous stream restoration projects to minimize the loss of trees, and you've addressed that by some shifting here and there. I mean, some of the other stream restoration projects, and I guess if Nikki's going to be part of this, or Claudia, or whoever goes out, sometimes just a little minor tweak, you can save a tree, and we're looking forward to that happening here as well. Because on paper, it's easy to go, oh, well, it's going to go here, and all those trees are going to be gone. And the guy goes out in the field, and sure enough, all those trees are gone, and maybe they didn't have to. So that's, other than that, any other comments up here? Jason? Charlie?
No, I just hope it doesn't turn out like the original Snakeden, where they cut a big access road and took out a 10-foot swath of trees that didn't seem to need to go. So I think in this
They've grown
case, they
back.
learned their lesson, and
Yep.
yeah, it's much needed. I get down that way.
Yeah. Neil? Nothing. Nick?
Nope.
All good.
Okay, I guess we need a motion to approve this final proposal. I'll make a motion, we approve the proposal as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good.
Thank you.
When is this going to start, just out of curiosity?
Next summer?
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I'll go buy a lawn chair so I can want it. Okay, I think we're going to recess for about 45 minutes. Oh, okay.
We get an
Lakewinds
hour
Fellowship
instead?
House. Come on down.
Usual 5-minute joke with the face.
No, I know.
When the face.
No, got their attention. That was the workshop, basically. I mean, we told them they do all this. Yeah. They did everything.
All right, we're good.
I was wondering if you all brought your very first PowerPoint presentation with you, if we could sort of start from 4 years ago.
Well, we thought we'd go through all of the presentations we've done so
I
far.
knew I loved
We
you for a
thought that
reason.
you had time for that tonight.
Really, this is perfect, because we have plenty of time. We're early.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Even the highlight reel would be 2 hours.
Just, yes, if we could go back through all the workshops and everything else we've had, we could be here a while.
The previous proposals.
This is, we had a workshop with this applicant a month ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And it was a very successful workshop, and they're here tonight looking for final approval. More goodies?
We just made some large copies for you. So thank you very much. I'll just start just very briefly by saying that this is the culmination of a very long process. We appreciate the fact we're kind of at the end of the road here. As was mentioned, we've been through a number of work sessions. In September, we did receive approval of, the site plan for the project. We then went to the Board of Supervisors, and they did approve the pending applications, the proper condition amendment, the development plan amendment. And then we were asked to come back to really work on some of the building design aspects and the materials, which we did. We came to a work session in October the 26th, and I thought that was a really productive dialogue. And at that work session, you may recall, I think most of you were there, we shared some different concepts, and I think we kind of focused on the ones that you expressed preferences for. And that's what we would like to share with you this evening and ask for your final approval. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to David, and he'll go through the final design.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us. The first slide is of the main entry, also known as the west elevation. At our works session on the 26th of October, we presented several different options for this and several different tweaks of different materials. And this is the bronze sunshade with revised canopy and express stair tower option. This is the exact slide you viewed before, just slightly cleaned up with added notes to clarify what we had discussed at the work session. And as required, we turned in black and white elevations taken from our Revit model. This is the exact slide we presented with just a few added notes based on the work session. The actual sunshade product is from a catalog. We've used it on several of our buildings, and in the upper right is how it would be used on the new Lake Ann house in a bronze color to match the windows and other elements on the building. We were asked to study and present refinement of the main entry canopy, which we did at the work session. This is that same view, which has a center raised canopy section, which addresses the height of the vehicles coming into the drop-off pickup area, and two lower sections where, as anybody who's visited Lake Ann House today knows, there are a considerable number of residents that very much enjoy sitting at the front entry, not just to be picked up because they're going someplace, but because they love watching the coming and going of their neighbors and visitors. And we have two lower areas, one on the left for expressly where you could wait under cover with a slightly lower canopy for protection, and on the right where the people that really enjoy sitting out get a little bit of sun and watch the coming and going. This is also a slide presented at the work session. This is the chosen concept, which includes the bronze sunshades. And this is the elevation of the actual village road in black and white with the materials called out in the lower right corner. These are, as you know, the building is multifaceted, and these are the end and interior corner elevations, partial elevations. This is the view of Baron Cameron. At the work session, we presented several options for this, and after consideration, I think collectively we felt that this was the most attractive and the nicest development and provided the most relief and good expression of the buildings at the ends as well as the middle. Black and white elevation the same. Again, these are the return elevations on the Baron Cameron with the interior inset and then the very end. I brought along with me the actual brick that we reviewed in the field at the Heron House, and this is a photo on the right-hand side of a blend of matching of brick that was recommended and vetted by actually holding it up and photographing it with the actual Heron House, which and other buildings in Lake Ann which have the same or similar blend. We reviewed several different colors for the panels, and these are the colors that were unanimously chosen at the work session.
Can I just ask you a quick question? If you go back to the Baron Cameron rendering, I'm sure this is, I don't know how this happens, all the other elevations, pardon me, you have the top floor, and then you have a band, and then it comes down to the base band, let's call it, okay? On all the other elevations, there are 5 levels in between those two bands, and on this side, there's 6. And I'm just wondering, is that a trompe l'oeil or something here? I've just noticed that there's a whole extra floor on this side that isn't on the front side. If you count the windows. In the brick band, in the brick vertical element, on the entry side, the North Shore side, there are 5 levels, and on the back side, there's 6. Like even there, right on the right-hand side of the building, you have six levels, and as you come around the other side, there are only 5.
Because the land. Elevation.
I don't know.
On the main entry here, there is an extra element, an extra horizontal element on this main elevation that isn't on the other elevations.
But when that runs around the building, does that mean it won't line up?
Where does it?
Notice when you come from your entry and you go down the North Shore side, does that band continue all the way around? Because all of a sudden you got an extra floor in there. I would assume the roof is level all the way around.
Yes, the roof is
And the
level.
top level is there all the way around.
7 stories.
It didn't look like snuck in an extra floor there. It's right there, between the lower band and the upper band, there are 5
I
floors.
saw it on the Barron Cameron elevation.
On the Barron camera, there's 6, yeah.
I think the south elevation sheet in your package, A203, you kind of see, I think maybe where that band finally stops. So it goes from the main entrance around into the courtyard, and then it disappears in the south, north, I guess it would be northeast corner maybe.
Well, it happens right at that corner. As you look at that corner, there are 5. 1, 2,
So it's still
3,
here, but if you go to the south elevation, south elevation.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're counting it right, because on the southeast perspective on your sheet A203,
You can see it continuing on the left side there, and it's in the back of the courtyard.
Yes,
But then
it
by the
is.
time it gets to the right tower in the foreground, it's not there anymore. The band at the,
I think slide
but
11
basically,
shows it.
on the village road, it looks like it's 8 stories high now, instead of 6 stories.
It's that band.
The colors here,
but it,
Richard, you're referring to this?
yeah,
color?
exactly.
So if you were to draw it around, it would, but since there's a.
It's
gap
stopping
on that,
somewhere.
there's elevation.
Okay, I always thought this was a 6-story building, and once you turn the corner, it becomes a 7-story building. That's the only reason I'm
not yet.
asking. Carry on.
The building panels and the brick that we reviewed at the work session. And this is an elevation that shows where those panels and colors are used on the building. We discussed at prior hearings to make sure that the screen on the garage extends more than 12 inches. It extends 1'6" or 18 inches on each side of the garage openings. We also discussed the options for the garage screen and the commitment from the developer to work with the public art group in Reston on the final panel design based on field mock-ups. We presented exterior building-mounted lighting and site lighting options, and at the work session, it was recommended that we look for a consistent attribute such as the bronze color, the bronze finish for any building-mounted or site-mounted lighting fixtures. In addition, we presented a preliminary slide for building signage with the statement that it would all be designed within the Reston Association sign guidelines. The signage at the main canopy would be brought in terms of the text, the height of the letters, and the style. There will be a project identification sign at the location of the entry drive where it meets North Shore Drive. And we would follow the
Reston sign design guidelines, which is natural materials, subdued colors, and soft light illumination, all to be submitted for approval closer to the time of construction. And finally, there is the notation that there will be several directional signs on the property, including signage to orient visitors and residents to the garage entry, as well as the loading zone, and of course, the requisite parking signs for handicap parking spaces and visitor spaces.
Good evening, Howard Katz with MVR. Our townhouse front elevations, we made the revision to elevation 3 by adding the box bay from the previous elevations. We also added the awning to that elevation. The color schemes are revised to match the multifamily building with materials and colors, hardy plank and masonry. Side elevation, we added the Juliet balcony to the side and raised the brick water table an additional floor to the second floor, and now it turns and we have just a little corner. I think we discussed at the meeting on the 26th, the white trim will not be installed. We'll have trim that will match the hardy plank color. We also talked about the awnings, making sure that they are bronze in color so that they match the awnings for the senior building. And at elevation 3, I will work with the architect to center those windows within the box bay. I think we also attached the various color schemes. Again, the white trim will not be installed. It will match the hardy plank color. And then the black line drawings as well are in the package.
Can you just talk about why you raised the brick like you did on that side elevation? Because it kind of ends awkwardly in the back then, and it didn't show up so awkwardly previously.
There was, I think one of the comments was made to try to enhance the side elevation. If the committee would like the brick to be only to the one course, first floor, that is fine with us.
So just to point out what I'm talking about, in case anyone didn't follow what I was asking. The top elevation there, obviously the side elevation, the brick's 2 stories tall. And then as you see, it wraps around to the back in the right-hand view there and terminates kind of awkwardly at the corner of the window. And then I thought, well, is it on the front of the house? And it's not on the front of the house either. It does the same kind of termination at the front, I believe. So.
Yeah, originally it was only 1 story, and it wrapped the back of the townhouse, the 1 story around the rear. If Neil is what you're asking is to extend that brick for the 2nd story for the end unit to finish out the covered balcony, covered porch in lieu of siding, you know, these are going to be $1 million townhouses by the time they're built, I'm certain.
I just think it's awkward the way it is now.
Right.
I mean,
So again, I have no problem finishing out. If your recommendation is to finish this brick out or eliminate it altogether.
Can you, I'm having trouble finding the front elevation of that unit. Can you show us how it wraps when it gets to the front of the house?
Should
Drops
be,
down.
So it can't do that. It can't just
It
be.
drops down like this.
Yeah, but where does it, oh, it makes the
It
transition.
makes sense before you hit the face. And then this bay sticks out in front of it. That's what's happening here, because it's, the side is up to here brick, and it drops down, so this bay projects. Which I think is okay, actually.
Okay on the front. I don't see how that works. That's not what he showed up there. Can you go back to the side elevation?
Let's see the brick, on the upper left corner, the brick stops. the two-level thing and drops down to one level. So when it comes around to the front, you only got the one level, this right here.
Can you go back?
I think it's okay at the front. I think the back's still kind of weird.
This one here?
Yeah.
But if you were to carry this line around, it would go above that second level, correct?
But that's a box bay.
Right.
It's not gonna carry, it's not gonna carry it around.
But you, once you get past the box bay on the other elevation, then you're picking it up at the second level.
I was trying to, again, there was some question to make the side elevations more prominent.
Right.
So I thought adding the brick, an additional level might, but the Juliet balcony.
I don't think throwing brick at it made it a better elevation. I think it made it actually this kind of equal part top and bottom instead of a base and a top. To my eye, just because you've used a better material, it's not a better composition. And I think in the back, again, it's an awkward termination. And it makes it look like you just spent a little money on the side and then ended it the minute. So I appreciate you saying you would be glad to extend it around the corner and across the back. Although again, I feel like it's kind of losing some of the basic base and top that most of the units have. So anyway, appreciate the effort. To my eye, it's not an improvement.
Any other questions?
I agree, that's awkward under the windows on that side. It would have been a lot better with a single story.
You guys done? Complet? Okay, any questions up here of the applicant?
I do have a question. Were you going on a thread? You're saying there's going to be $1 million homes, so you don't want to add price to the home
No,
by
I
paying
was,
brick?
I apologize for my sarcasm.
Well, I'm sarcastic too, so I'm just
Okay.
trying to get in the
It
same
just,
wavelength.
by the time the senior housing building is completed and the demolition occurs, it'll probably be 2023 when we start.
But was your point that you didn't want to add cost to them?
No, they're expensive elevations to begin with. So, I mean, hardy plank and brick are the same cost, so it doesn't matter whether it's a brick side or a hardy plank side. So I want to do what's right for Reston, and I would agree with Neil that adding the brick to the second floor is not adding anything to the side elevation, and it does terminate awkwardly as it turns the corner to the rear.
That can be fixed too.
And my recommendation would be to delete it and just do the one-story brick so that it ties into the front and ties into the rear. And we have the Juliet balcony that we added on the side elevation.
Well, there's something to be said for a more durable material that will have less of a life cycle cost.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Continue.
the only comment I'd make on the side elevation is that I think the sort of severe horizontal line that cuts across there, saying brick and hardy plank, it could almost become a little more playful. And if it did turn the corner, you left everything just the way it is. But if, instead of that slam horizontal line across there, you got two windows above it on the right-hand side. If the brick came over and then dropped down to the first floor level, so it would just create more interest. And I object to that hard line coming across there because it makes the top look like a trailer park and the bottom looks like a Georgetown townhouse.
So your recommendation would be to terminate it here at that window?
And drop the hardy plank down.
Same
Now, keep the
thing.
brick to the rear.
Same thing here, terminate here. and-
It's something like that would just add more interest to it. It's just that horizontal line coming across there is just driving me nuts.
Okay.
It would just be a little more playful, be a little more interesting. And I think somewhere, just in our discussions, like you say, it's going to be 2023 before these start. I mean, if we're looking for a final approval, I know we can do the big building thing. How do we want to handle that? Do we want to have some leeway in there that in 4 years or 5 years, you may want to change the design of this? Do we just approve it now, and then if you want to change it, you come back then and say, I want to change it? Is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Well, I'm going to speak on behalf of the applicant because that question came up, I think, in the work session.
Yeah.
And in the work session.
Now we have a specific issue. It's a little
Right.
different from the work session.
Right. I would ask that you give the guidance in your approval. I mean, we need approval of the townhome side of this this transaction with whatever guidance is needed for the correction.
And I think with the understanding that if modifications are needed, they will come back through the process at that time,
Okay.
because we
All right.
can't predict the future. So.
Okay, anyone else have any other questions?
I also, if I could point out, I just wanted to ask a question. I know that when we went through the approval process on the site design, we had asked for a longer period of time because of the fact that you have to build the building, then demolish the old building. And so I was going to ask for similar consideration with your decisions tonight, if we could have that same time period.
What do you have in mind?
We had gone, when we went through this in September, it was 7 years, both Phase 1 and Phase 2, with Phase 1 completed approximately December of 2021. I think that is what.
That's what you gave us before, so we just want to make sure it applies
And
to
that's
this approval.
Okay, still? Okay. Anyone have any other questions and/or comments?
I've got a question on the railings at the courtyard, which are different from the balcony railings on the building. They look like they're horizontal pipe rails. I don't know what they really are. Have you ever submitted anything on that? Do we know what those are? And do we want them to be the vertical pickets like the rest of the building? If not, we certainly want them to be code compliant. So slide 14, you can get a little view there. I mean, it's horizontal pipe rail, you can see on top of the, 14 shows it, not in context.
I'm sorry. There.
So in the top there, you see the top of the parking garage, which is the plaza courtyard. We're showing a horizontal pipe rail, and I just want to know what that is, because sometimes that can be a really cheap-looking, utilitarian-looking solution, and it's very prominent. You also have railings that show up in the rendering at the front entrance, if we went to the very first front entrance rendering, and they looked white, which I don't think, that's probably a rendering issue along the right-hand side there. So I think that's the same grade elevation issue, where you have a retaining wall or where you have the courtyard that drops off down to the road. You know, what are those railings going to be? They're vertical here, they're horizontal at the courtyard, they're vertical in the balconies. They're brown in the balconies, they look white there. So let's be thinking, just, you know, and I'm sure you're happy to do whatever we say.
I mean, on your sheet A203, you can see, I think, what Neil's talking about. You get the horizontal railings across the plaza, and then you have the vertical railings on the balconies. If that's the intent, let's talk about it.
To answer your several questions, Neil, several things that you pointed out. I believe in this site model that when we were rendering that railing that is which is a site railing, we honestly just didn't use the eyedropper to put color on it. I think it just was a complete oversight on our part. It just wasn't attached to the building, and when we were modeling the railings, it didn't get the same color because it's probably modeled as a different family because it's a site, we were thinking it was a site feature. I think I think you would agree, well, we would suggest that it be the same as the building, that it be rendered in a bronze. In this elevation, where you see the corner balconies with the vertical railing, I think that was one of the first things that we did in the composition of the building that the committee responded to, and I think we responded to as well, that the corners were one of the most well-developed and well-thought out. And that's the railing that I would suggest that we use on the terrace as well, and to be consistent, the railing that you're seeing in the corner of the building above the canopy, which is a vertical. So they'd all be vertical, yes.
Any other questions, comments?
All vertical and all bronze.
Even on the plaza?
All the time.
Okay. Questions, thoughts, anything else? Did we ever resolve the type of screen that was gonna go into the openings at the parking garage? Because we had some discussion on that. One made it look more
The art.
organic and one made it look more,
Yeah, I think what we're proposing is to do this in the field with, and bring in Public Art and Reston staff to help us to see what looks better in the field rather than trying to decide here. And either one would
I
be
don't
close
care which
enough.
one you use as long as it's the one on the left.
Well, it's your
But that's
choice to
just
tell us,
me.
dictate. We just thought we should try it out in the field and see what we thought looked better.
I think we should approve one personally, but
That's fine with us, it's either way.
I have no problem with that. Any other questions or comments? I think we're working our way rapidly toward a motion here of some form.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the fellowship.
Is there an affected party?
Do we have any affected parties that want to speak?
I don't see them here, though.
Is there anyone out there that has comments they want to make or not?
I saw them earlier, so I didn't know.
Okay, all right. Time's up.
Please continue.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve the Lake Ann House architecture submitted with the revisions to the railings to be vertical and the selection of the left-hand garage screen detail. Also, a motion to approve the townhouse designs is submitted with the slight revision to the side elevations to step so that at the front and the back it ends at 1 story and rises to 2-story at the Juliet balcony feature. And I think that's all I have.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
If the applicant would like to come back in and change the screen, they could do so 2 years from now, 3 years from now?
That's always an option,
Okay.
but that's a really nice.
The one on the right.
No, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. So we have a visual count and an aye, okay?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
on
you all.
behalf,
Clarification, the time period, was that?
Oh, and the-
Time period consistent with our.
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
I'll
Just
agree
make
to that.
Make sure staff has that, as you just stated, 2021 and 7 years total, is that what it was?
right. So on behalf of the 240 residents of the Fellowship House at Lake Ann, we want to thank you. This has been, I know it's taken a lot of time and energy on your part with many meetings, but we really appreciate it, and we think we've got a great product.
And
This will look
yeah,
great.
I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you.
it. Thank you all for your endurance.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised if you see me in 6 months with Island Walk.
All right.
Okay, with that, I believe we have finished our agenda for the evening, so the board, the chair will entertain a motion to.
I move to adjourn. I second that.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
By saying.
Yeah, really. Have a good Thanksgiving.